Hello, everybody. This is John Blank, Chief Equity Strategist at Zacks Investment Research. And today we are going to go through the story of the Asian large cap ETFs. We talked about macro Asia in our last session. Now we're going to move on and talk about the ETFs and the shares that you can play in this region. So, first off, our disclosures: the views of John Blank, PhD, are not necessarily the views of Zacks Investment Research, and past performance is no guarantee of future results. Keep all of that in mind. All right, so we're ending 2023, and like I said, we're going to talk about the top Zacks Asian ETFs and their major stocks. Part one will be the ETF price performance charts and top Asia large cap shareholdings. Part two will be the price earnings and price to book share valuations, the Zacks ETF rank, and return analysis. Part three will be just a couple of emerging market ETFs to look into the space from the outside and look at the broader world. Okay, so part one is the ETF price performance charts and top Asia large cap shareholdings. Once again, I've circled for you ticker ASHR and ticker CXSE. These are from Wisdom Tree and DWS, and they are actually going to prove to be, from the last cycle up to 2018 or 19, the best tracking ETFs in this space. You probably don't know of them. They're about $2 billion under management and $900 million under management. They're decent size, but the ones you probably do know, MCHI and KWEB, are the big holdings. They're the ones that everybody typically plays. The first one in the space was actually BlackRock in 2004. That was FXI. So over here, you've got the different stories of the segments. Here you've got the index that they track. Here's the expense ratio, the assets under management, the inception date, the issuer, and the fund name. Same is true down here for the Indian ones. Keep in mind, all of this is for you to study later on, and it really does matter here. For example, the direction ones, which are your shorts, are actually very expensive and very unhelpful. Keep in mind that you can always choose to come back to this chart and get them from Zacks. It is very helpful to do so. Japan, South Korea, and Indonesia have top ETFs from the same players. Obviously, once again, we see that Japan started out in '96, whereas China came in 2004 out of BlackRock. But now we've got new ones. The Beta Builders from JP Morgan is 2018. The Franklin FTSE Japan is 2017. And some of these are actually getting to be fairly sizable AUMs. And I think all of this can be considered. Down here, of course, Indonesia. You definitely don't know this area. A lot of bank stocks in the Indonesian funds. Not sure what to make of this. But again, keep all of this as a set of slides that you can get from us to study these different ETFs holdings. All right, price performance charts. Over here we have China. Here we have South Korea, Indonesia. Basic thing you want to point out here is the start of the COVID pandemic. To no surprise, in all these areas, the stocks collapsed. What is different here, though, is China went into a bubble framework all the way into early 2021. This was also true in South Korea, less true from Indonesia because this is usually the ETFs have bank shares. They don't tend to get much momentum trading. So this is really a story of ETF composition in Indonesia. As you can see, we are now 2 years late in a pullback that has taken these back to lower levels than pre-COVID for China. And we can also see that they put in a massive face plant back in October. So this is a good time to look at it, China. We've got all these MCHI, FXI, KWEB, those are the big ones. But down, like I said, the Asher is here and the CXXE is here. These two ones are actually going to be very good. However, as you can see, really these all track to some degree. The FXI doesn't move as much. The KWEB moves more. So again, looking at this as your base, I would obviously stay away from these leverage funds. I'm pointing that out here. They simply do not work. But there's a lot of different ones, Asher and CSXE, that are actually interesting in this perspective. And of course, KWEB. All right, top holdings. One I want to point out here that you cannot see, Alibaba and Tencent are 20% of most of these holdings. So why even bother? You can just pick up Alibaba and Tencent on your own. Meituan is another name just below that you do not know. This is the largest food delivery service in China with a 70% share of the market in 2020, according to the Chinese government. 50% of its revenue food delivery. So Meituan again and JD is your next one are things that you can buy on your own. I would basically buy those stocks. Tencent, Alibaba, Meituan, and JD. Over here, I've got the tickers and the AUMs for you, all laid out for you in one place. And here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the top holdings. Once again, just keep this in mind. You can pick shares out of here and just avoid the ETFs altogether. All right, price performance charts for Japan, India. Japan is over here and India is here. Once again, you see the face plan in 2020, the rise to that peak in early 21 in the last 18 months of sideways performance. These ones like DBJP are hedged equity funds, why they're going sideways. You want to keep this in mind. There are hedged equity funds. Probably not time to hedge when you're down at the lows. So do not think about that as a trade now. The Nifty is the First Trust India Nifty 50 equal weight. That's going to be right here. Again, I like generally equal weight funds with lots of exposure. If you're going to buy an ETF, try to get stuff that has broad exposure, in my opinion. All right, top holdings over here again: Toyota, Sony, Mitsubishi, KN, SoftBank, Sumitomo, Tokyo Electron. Play these names. I don't really, frankly, think there's any value here in the Japanese ETFs. You can play these names. They're all the same. Just pick them out and play them. Same actually is true over here with the Indian names. Again, here you've got the AUM for the India, and you've got Japan's AUM. And here are your top 10 holdings. So you can figure out these on your own, find the tickers on your own, and play these indexes directly through their major holdings. The same is true for South Korea. I've got over here circled K-pop. That's a very interesting ETF with the entertainment names in South Korea that are now very hot. You can see there's actually just very little in K-pop. It's only 3 million under management, but the names are interesting here. These are your core names that you all know about. Of course, Samsung, Hynix, LG, POSCO, Hyundai. You're going to know these names very well in your own space right now. Down here's the Indonesian names. I just want to point out they're all basically banks. That is the basic trouble with playing a lot of these ETFs in the emerging market space, is they basically stuff the ETFs with finance sector holdings. You're not getting those stories of either commodities, industrials, or tech that you would like. Keep that in mind. Part 2, share valuations, ETF rank, and return analysis. I just want to point out here that, again, from a PE perspective, we're back at these 2019 lows of 10 PEs. This is also true over here for the Indian ones that are a little higher, but still low. And the Chinese ones, of course, are putting in that nice technical low. That's why I like to talk about these shares, because now is a good time to pick them up. All right, percentage change in AUM. What we're looking for is big plays like here, where people are making current decisions. Then you can see, we can also look at the contrarian, where people were really doing the big face plants like they were back in 2020. And in both cases, you can see that late 2022 period for the AUMs in China. This is actually what you were looking for as a contrarian. The same is true here for the Japanese and the South Korean ones, which are below. They're all at these PEs of 9 and 10 and back to 2019 levels. Japan actually looks much worse than South Korea and Indonesia. I would keep that in mind. But basically, the trade here, in my opinion, is the China story, not necessarily the Japan story. All right, percentage change in AUM. I just want to point out there's a big play going on in South Korean ETFs right now. That is your bull story. Somebody's moving in on the AUM of South Korean companies. Maybe you should too. I think it's probably a good idea. All right, the ETF ranks. I just want to point out here that up until basically 2021, when the momentum was there, we did have 2s and 1s on these stocks at times across the region. Haven't had those now. This is in some respects something I wouldn't take too seriously, because the turn will come in before the ranking is. Our ranking system doesn't do a good job with turns, and that's exactly what's happening right now, a turn. All right, return analysis. I just want to point out here that I circled in red, you want to look over 2015 to 2018 and 2018 to 21. The current stuff here is not as helpful. That's the pullback. You know about this. But you basically want to find things that move well. And again, like I said, ASHR and CXSE are really nice ones. CQQQ is the China tech one. Again, I like these names that move a lot. If you're going to play the upside, then play the upside that happened in the past in these two areas. And again, these three names, ASHR, CQQQ, and CXSG, are your best bets. All right, now I'm going to finish up quickly with the emerging market ETFs, just to show you how this all works. Over here, you've got, like I said, finance everywhere driving these businesses. Here's all the tickers. Vanguard is the cheapest from an expense ratio perspective. But at the end of the day, VW and everyone else is playing your bank stocks. This is the paradox of the emerging market business. You're basically buying bank stocks, not really getting into the growth of these markets directly. Keep that in mind. These are actually kind of a poor way to play the emerging markets. All right, here's the ETF allocations. Over here is VWO, probably the best one is Vanguard. Just notice that they've got Qatar, Thailand, Brazil, Chile, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, a lot of weird countries. Over here, the EM, you got Hong Kong, Taiwan, and India, more Asian focused in the EMs. I generally would just go to the actual stocks and companies we talked about earlier, then looking through all of this. That's it for me. John Blank, PhD, Chief Equity Strategist and Economist at Zacks Professional Services. Here's how you can get a hold of these slides, which are most important for all of you. 866-794-6065. Strategy call at ZacksPro.com, www.zackspro.com, or find us on LinkedIn at Zacks Professional Services or on Twitter at ZA Tools. Once again, please give us a call. It's the best way to get a hold of these slides and learn the details of these markets. 866-794-6065.